Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Hopefully, my voice is loud and clear. I wanted to speak about worlds that live behind words, and I always found myself fascinated by the resemblance of the word, WORD, and the word world, WORLD. And it's as if my mind playfully fathomed what is that L? What is that L doing there? you know? And I eventually realized L is kind of like playfully life. And that a word with life, with a living intelligence, becomes a world. That symbols are inanimate, yet in attention they animate. Ludwig Wittgenstein was a very notable philosopher. And in one of his works, which was called Tractatus Logico Philosophus, something, something like that, where he was speaking about how language mirrors reality, and how there's a sort of instantaneous moment where how we see something as a image and how a word is a statement can have like a similar value. So what that means is, imagine there is a giant cube outline, you know, behind you, like a giant kind of plane behind you, and you don't see it. And somebody who's standing in front of you sees you, and it's like, of course, you haven't turned around to experience that giant plane, but somebody tells you, "Hey, man, there's a giant tile behind you." That sentence has a closeness of animate realism to actual reality, and the relationship of language to all the relationship of language's position to all human thought was the interest of the continental philosophers. Pretty much the philosophers that did not avoid language, because it's easy to avoid language. It's pretty much life, because we're multidimensional beings. Its power, the power of reality, is either going to image or it is going to sentence structure. That means when a professor is asked questions in a university, for example, in the Oxford Union, what you see is that words are the response. The professor doesn't stand up doing some unique kind of shamanic dance or something. The professor sits there with his tie all straight and looks at people, and in some sense, as there has been an exchange of language, as in some sense language has been thrown to the professor's like, you throw a ball to me, I'll throw this ball back at you. And so really language is playing catch with words. Years ago, I'm no longer in contact with this friend, of course, but there was a time where I had this friend where I went to, camping with him and his older brother. This was years ago, and we were sitting around the campfire, and my friend's name was Gabriel, and he asked, him and his brother were talking. I was just sitting there. I think I was kind of like staring into the fire or something, you know. And I remember kind of like I was hearing. I wasn't engaged in the conversation, but I was hearing how Gabriel and his older brother were talking about how much information a person can receive in their life by just listening. How your ears are access to design all the time. And if the person has an incredible concentration, if you stand somewhere and close your eyes, you'll see how all the senses are speaking their own language. And when that language has a potential to ascribe to image, man can, in some sense, communicate through many things and have many things communicate to him. For example, if you think about it objectively, you know, in regards to the human form, you'll be like, a human can't talk to a tree. A human, you know, like can't, like the tree doesn't acknowledge someone talking to it. You know, it doesn't have like the intelligence as we do. So we feel those different than us cannot comprehend us. But the thing is that if, yeah, if you think about human communication, of course, the tree cannot speak. But if you think about you being a phenomena of energy and everything else being a phenomena of energy, and we're sort of the energetic movement in a vacuum. I mean, I don't know what greater thing science is telling us. That it's as if there's a giant space and there's stuff in it moving. And to comprehend these laws will mean an index of the whole space, which is impossible. So it's as if science's updates will always forever be theoretical, you know? But this is very common in everything. Of course, it's as if the mind takes steps first, then the body takes steps. Everything I have done, even everything I've said, it's as if my mind has already stepped there before I say it. That's why I have a comfort with it, you know, communicating. My focus in this episode is trying to say that there is a very major difference between words and worlds. And there is a value that appears of direct experience. For me, my direct experience was something I would contain in language. So what does that mean? That means that young, I feel like pretty much everybody's like this. Every human being that enters this system, every Homo sapien that opens its eyes on Earth, sorry guys, my attention drifted for a second. Pretty much the human being is born, it is born with an incredible urge to identify. The way I kind of feel early human existence and this plane of existence, it's like you're trying to get to the party. I think for 30 years of life, the person is running towards some place, some location, some destination, or some sort of a inner psychological home or resolution to this phenomenology. What that means is it's like your eyes have opened, you have seen what's in the mirror, and you're also noticing there's something looking in the mirror, you know, through your eyes. That was the major point for me. That means that I remember hearing the concept of a soul when I was young, and I remember looking in the mirror, right? And when I looked in the mirror, there was something unique because I could totally see what was the content of the sight. For example, the physical body looking in the mirror, but the what was looking it's like when my eyes saw the body, I could see that I am the body. But when my eyes looked at themselves, there was an unknown. It was the unknown was reflecting back into itself. So it was as if I kind of looked at the human body. I'm like, okay, when I see this, I can totally see it's there. But when I looked inside my own eyes in the mirror, there was a very unique mystery. that mystery was not, I didn't feel drawn to it through a sort of traditional spirituality. Traditional spirituality shuns a lot of modern behavior pretty much, and any sort of metaphysics that was opened up through religious context has a sort of renunciate element to it. That means you know there was a time I was really living like a Tibetan Buddhist monk, you know. It was a very unique time. I was like that Persian guy with Tibetan Buddhist beads, kind of, with a very beautiful Jewish girlfriend at the time, you know. So I was a very strange kind of person, you know. Buddhist Persian guy. You don't see that every day. Because I'll tell you guys, in Persian culture, most Buddhists will be seen as people that just sitting around doing nothing, like Buddhist meditation and whatnot. For me, it has been a search for the living and the experiential, and that has come to me as unknown. And when I've searched for the that which is existential and not life, it has come to me as known. So this is something strange, that the moment we put something into words, we change the attention of everybody who would look at that phenomena from the world to the word. Do you know? For example, imagine you're a person and we entertain kind of Heraclitus's notion that no man steps in the same river twice, and it is not the same man, it is not the same river. What that means, in every moment of your life, rather than you one self kind of journeying, you are many senses of self. So if you are a creature with a mind that is changing, like we see your physical body change, everybody's physical body changes like after 10 years. The cells change every 2 weeks, evidently. You know, and we see even the psychological constitution, the exposure to experience, and how one's even own identity and ability, sense of their own ability has changed. You kind of see it's as if everything is changing, right? And if somebody came and suddenly critiqued you on a sort of sentence, it's like you'll see life is not about temporary questions having right temporary answers. The whole point of evolution is simply summed up in the word continuity. Even in metaphysics, even I'm not joking, even a lot of people are drawn towards spirituality because they don't know how to confront or process their mortality. I'll tell you, the design of the building is the self, but what is building the architecture of the inner realms is life. So it's kind of suddenly realizing, oh my God, is external reality sculpting my a sense of inner being? For me, the worlds that live behind words either go towards infinite, a sort of void stillness, or they go towards an infinite movement. For me, human beings, their game, let's say every creature is playing a game in accordance to the environment. Every environment the person enters has a certain game going on in it. That means when you like I find myself blessed to have traveled to different countries, and like I've lived a couple months in Italy, a couple months in India, even the UK and various other places. I can tell you this, that in my experience is that when a person is functioning in the external realm, life appears as a coagulation of multidimensional systems of intelligence. So in front of your eyes, life is happening as a multidimensional program and system. And is a testament to our ability as creatures to have at some point there being just meaning. For example, Like one creature, imagine the early caveman, or even, I don't know, maybe a bit more ahead than that in history, where the creature couldn't speak yet but cared for the existence of the other creature, you know? It's like this is how they say, they, like siblings speak a hidden language of caring for each other's souls, you know? That was the whole notion of the family. Now I'm saying we're moving to, upon realizing that all our minds are orphaned. And when I say orphaned, as in the mind is an orphan in the sense that what I mean by that is that the mind is, um, has to deal with itself. That means you don't have to just be in the presence of other minds. When you wake up, usually you're in the presence of your mind. And when it comes to the conscious seer, that means it's as if in Vedic times there was talk about the seer of thought. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is that we are a field of attention, and every change in this field can be ascribed to a new self, or it can be ascribed to a past self. Language is the container of real experiences. Every word that has come into existence is because there was somebody who was experiencing something that needed that term there. You see, it's as if we kind of looked back. This is kind of hilarious, but if we consider ourselves as evolutionary animals, then we see, like, for example, chimpanzees cleaning each other's back, you know. And so it's, what does that mean? That means the activity of one individual has become the help to another individual, you know. So it's all about kind of a civilization progressing into an era of double-sided win-win results of every action. You know, it's as if it's like, trust me, just to be victorious in the world is not enough. Let's say you have a huge ego and you become victorious. You're the king of kings, you know? So what happens after that? Then the king of kings will command itself the kingdom of kingdoms. So what does that mean? That means ultimately individual elevation to any sort of hierarchy will be a remembrance of what that being is a hierarchy of. That means the king has to look at the kingdom. You know, like there's this story where these two peasants are like talking to one another. They're like, poor king. God, he has to think about the kingdom every day, but I can go just lie down on the grassland and sleep. You know? So you see, it's like it is extension of the free will into um, the creativity of novelty. How the new ushers in new frameworks where reality can be projected. Yeah, there's something I wanted to share that comes from Ludwig Wittgenstein's work, this German philosopher. He says things that we cannot speak about must pass over in silence. Honestly, before kind of getting introduced to Ludwig Wittgenstein, I had kind of conceived this as the language threshold. If we choose to see language as ourselves, any voice can reconstitute your inner realm. And that's where certainty arises from also. That means when you think about it, how is it one human being does an action and there is no inefficiency? And then one person does the action, there's a lot of inefficiency. And I believe it has to do with certainty. That means if people treat every moment of their life as if they're sitting in a car, when you sit in a car, what do immediately? You pay attention to everywhere. You pay attention to your mirrors, your seat elevation, you check to see if your left foot is hitting that kind of part of the car. You know, you check, you adjust in the moment, then drive. right? Now, this adjusting in the moment and then driving, it happens when we're in cars and when we have to follow the rules of the road. But when it comes to normal moments, we don't have that observance. For example, the higher the speed of the vehicle goes, the more the observance is increased. So what that means is the greater your concentration becomes, the faster you experience the movement of the subjective realms. Eventually, the subjective realms can get so fast that two things either happen. Either your attention gets pulled into a new archetypal reality, or you detach, you let go of something that is moving faster than you can hold on to it. This is the grand glory of human existence, that we're wondering, excuse my language, but we're wondering what the fuck is this rock in the middle of nowhere? Like, for me, there is nothing more surreal than the world. It doesn't get more surreal than that. That means all of reality is in a sort of oscillation between known things and unknown things, unknown phenomena and unknown phenomena. And this is why I say the greatest courage is not sacrifice. It is confrontation of the unknown, to realize that this is life. There is unknown elements to it. It can't be controlled by just the inner realm. If it was, then you would just be in your inner realm. That means if everything in if life went if life happened exactly the way you want, you have to be very kind of cautious at that point and be like, whoa, am I just in my imagination? Am I just in my inner realms? And this sensitivity between the inner realms and outer realms is the most important thing that psychology is missing nowadays. I have no idea. Like I feel sorry. It's strange, you know. I'm not doubting that many clinicians, even those of the like of Jordan Peterson and those who have kind of held the banners of psychology. I'm not denying that they have not helped. They have helped many people, but for me, it was a tragedy. It was a tragedy in human consciousness when one being, in some sense, how can I tell you, when the clinician, the psychologist or the therapist, instead of making it clear that, hey buddy who's come to me to ask for help, I don't have your eyes. You know, therapists don't say this. This is why sometimes I feel they're standing behind a kind of untouchable shadow, so they feel they don't have to be responsible for the light in the eyes of other people. The light in the eyes of others. So the thing is, rather than the clinician making it clear what is the inner realm and the outer realm, and how every person has an inner and outer realm, and the outer realm has collective laws which you must respect. The inner realm has a sort of unconditional freedom. That's where your free will is living. You know, your free will is an inner phenomena. Surprise. And so what that means is, as far as the mind concerned, it's creating the body. But as far as the body is concerned, without the body, there is no mind. So it's like, how can I speak about a moment or a world that has no content? What would a world of atoms look like? And we cannot fathom. We cannot put an image to the absence of image. It's like, as you live your life, you have to consider you are a unique kind of a unique pattern of DNA. Okay? Like, your DNA is different than other human beings. That's an advantage for your species, for your civilization. Civilization is very, if I was to explain the concept of an advanced civilization to, like, just a civilization to children, I would say, you know how you see your family, you're like, is living inside a house. Now, I want you to think we are a family of human beings, the human species, and we are a family of minds, and civilization is the house that we are 8 billion minds are choosing to live in, to care for the furniture in this house, to care for the walls of this house, and to even realize that beyond its doors there's more. That means a civilization that cannot evolve is no civilization at all, it is an illusion. This may be a very bold statement, but really, all the games of language are happening in two ways. Either self is defining world, or world is defining self. Either the self is unknown or the world is unknown. It is very rare to for a human being to function as known in the self. Their self is known and their self is unknown and the world is unknown. To kind of function in that state, I would say at that point you're not even a human being. You're just a field of intelligence. You are like the winds of evolution at that point. By the way, guys, hopefully I'll be starting a new YouTube channel. I've had this in mind for a while, where I'm going to kind of use a whiteboard. You know, that makes it so much easier. I say geometry is a language. I say geometry is the next great language of all languages. And when we look at a language is a translation of the movement of something in another dimension. That means when for example, I'm bilingual. So, for example, um, I say the sentence, there's a pen on the table, and I translate it into Farsi and I say, "Ye khudkar ro mize," you know? So for me, those two sentences are like I have to treat them as two separate dimensions, yet they are being used by the same intelligence. So do you see when we have a relationship that multidimensionality is being conducted by the singular and the singular is being conducted by the void and the void has nowhere else to go other than towards the infinite? We realize the kind of true cycle of life. I have often said, kind of a person who confronts like my own framework of the multidimensionality of this reality. I've spoken about it in many ways, but I've concluded for the general public in the sense that I would say there's the zero dimension, there's the one dimension, there's the two dimension, and then there's the infinite dimension. And by acknowledging these four circles, a person will get a full comprehension of how to navigate in this plane of existence. These four dimensions, the way I explain them, I feel if a person hears this, you'll at least you have attained the same level of comfort I have with this plane of existence. Because it is phenomenological, and it has again the unknown variables. The unknown variables of life is where excitement is born from. And most people, when unknown things happen, they run to their caves of knowledge. It's like when the village gets attacked, they try to run back to the knowledge rather than confronting the unknown. For me, life is a living mystery. Yet, if I choose to see this mystery as inanimate, I will be only left with the only animate intelligence in my free will. But if that means in my inner realms. But if I choose to have the inner realms be settled like the ripples on a pond and witness the outer realms, eventually I will see the outer realms have an intelligence of their own. And when you trust that intelligence, it goes. So pretty much nature is like a subway. We're all in, right? But when it comes to the inner reality, it's like the inner reality is what the person is choosing to read on this subway. Language is, excuse me, language is something that we must become responsible for. We can say the language in the mind of a person is the program that filters their decision making. And this is why I was very concerned, for example, when my aunt, my very young cousin at a young age, my aunt gave him a cell phone, and he was playing Angry Birds 24/7. And this kid didn't realize, he didn't have the knowledge to know that he should not hold the phone right in front of his face, right in front of his eyes. And his mother and my aunt didn't care. She really cared. She really loved her son, but it was like she didn't care about that. And I remember telling her, don't give this phone to this kid at this young age, you know? And eventually, my cousin had to get really big glasses because this poor kid was just playing, and it's as if pixels were like centimeters away from his face, and there was nobody to kind of tell him that was wrong, or you didn't even have the kind of understanding to know that's wrong. You know, this is why when technology is given too soon to the person doesn't depend on their own intelligence to grow and evolve. They become dependent on the technology. And because we've become dependent on language, this inner technology to explain reality, we have become lazy to actually experience life ourselves. So the value of life has gone into this superficial kind of linguistic simulation, and different philosophers and different people are coming and changing this giant sculpture of language, which is all the philosophies of man's existence. So what it is this giant sculpture of which is history. Every person is coming, and the way they choose to live is eventually will lead to sculpting it somehow. You know, in their actuality. That means it's like they say, why does a person exist? Well, to experience three-dimensional space. Or to move to engage it. You know, some things like it's inherent in the design. Like when you see, for example, you have a mouth and you have teeth, so you as a being, as a living being on this planet, as the Homo sapien, are like, okay, this is for food, you know, this is for chewing. Like the teeth, by the position they are showing their purpose. So when I was looking at the human design, I noticed its purpose is to be a relationship of light and matter. That means the mind is just how light is hitting matter. What appears is the content of the mind. That means this is strange, but that black abyss when you close your eyes, behind your eyes, is sponsored by the light of existence that gives you a reference point to even consider the darkness. So for me, I stopped being so interested in superhero films when I realized chaos and order are codependent. The yin yang symbol has spoken in an instant. That is in one circle, in one moment, where the various forces are dancing with one another. Or kind of like there's, imagine like you are a little kind of like Chinese farmer's boy, and you go outside at night, to get some water, and you see in the sky two giant dragons, one glowing white and one black, kind of spiraling in the moonlight, going towards the moon. At that point, you will lose your physical thirst, and the thirst of the beyond will appear. In people's lives, the unknown approaches them differently. And really, life is not just about beliefs, it's not just about declaration. Life is about hearing the living. Like there's something alive here. We're on, like, imagine your civilization is on a giant turtle's back. Like right now, me and you, imagine the ground, which is the foundation for all our homes, is on a giant turtle's back. And some people are like, whoa, 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 whoa. If this is a giant turtle, it's a living phenomena beyond our scope of even interpretation. So man, just like how you see, for example, a scuba diver very gently goes towards the whale, it doesn't just really fast swim like a missile towards the whale. You see, it's as if man also has to have the same discretion when it comes to wondering about how the unconscious is projecting forth the appearance of the the appearance of subjectivity. for me, I'm like, oh my God, the linguistic simulation has even owned colors. Language is such a powerful technology. It's like everything that exists, it's come right beside it and said, no, this exists too. So you can say language, the subjective realm, is the parallel self of reality. Your imagination is the parallel self of who you are now. And this is something I say I got shocked why people don't use this, because it's something only person I saw speak about it a little was Alan Watts, and he just suggested a little thing about it, and I was like, oh my god. And what it is the development of the dualistic mind, becoming content with the dualistic dimension. What does that mean? That means right now, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, and write a sentence of honestly who you think you are right now or who you feel you are. Just write that sentence, you know? So if you're authentically listening, guys, just do this. Just get a piece of paper and write a sentence as if you were going to put this moment how you are as a person. As a person, don't I'm not trying to make it this a kind of poetry thing. I'm just saying, like, just honestly write down as if words could be a mirror of reality, as Ludwig Wittgenstein says, how you see this moment, who you are in this moment. That means you're answering the question, who am I in this moment? And just write a sentence. That sentence is being observed. The content of your mind is being observed in a contentless way. Vision is either the known looking through the unknown or the unknown looking through the known. This whole thing about spirituality is that is when the unknown moves. That's the divine will, when the unknown moves you. Now, the unknown is something so personalized by people that it's banished, it's exiled from their conscious persona. That means a person who doesn't realize how empty this world is can't really understand, I feel, how full it can be. That means don't fear failure. Failure is just like the furniture in the room is just being taken out of the room. New furniture can come in any moment. That sentence that the person wrote on that piece of paper did not exist, and then it existed. And with this subtle recognition that it's something that is put there by the instantaneity of the attention on the phenomena, that means right now I'm looking at like this cup in front of me. Okay, so when my attention is on this cup, everything else has become preferable when I'm concentrating on the cup, But suddenly, when I look at this laptop, then the cup has gone into the periphery, and this constant thing that our attention is changing the concept and the context constantly. So life is having a multidimensional changing effect on the human being, even though it's a singular effect. Like, think about it. The person suddenly, I remember being with someone who she said she suddenly began tearing up for how she had lost their phone, you know and it's as if, like, to someone else looking at that, to, let's say, like a 70-year-old man, if there was that was imagine, like, had heard the conversation, like a working blue collar guy, that person would be like, why are you crying over an object, you know but she was crying over the loss of the meaning that was conditionally kept by that object being around her. People desire things because they desire their greater vision, and they don't know how to get it, so it becomes this animalistic instinctual effort, you know where it's as if you're just clawing to see what will happen, you know and that's not a good way to explore the unknown. That's not that I would say that's when still a character in a story, you're still a character in a story that can suffer. So any person who still thinks their language, when you go into the how can I say experienced states of mind where where language is moving at speeds where it becomes a film, sentence structure becomes a film at high speeds, you know. It's a symbiosis between a bunch of dimensions. And these dimensions, I would say, are concentric, like concentric spheres, spheres that are within one another, like those Russian dolls, you know. That means it's as if I found it interesting. We see the mind can put image anywhere. The mind is not experiencing itself separate to phenomena, you know. Sorry, separate to the body. The body is like a part of the vision of the mind, and the mind is like the whole vision. And the whole vision, once realized that cannot be contained in language, becomes an experiential movement. That experiential movement, it's fair at that point to say it's the soul, you know. You know, like I'll grant the word soul as a kind of station there. You know, I want to go into a kind of quote tunnel of as a tribute to Ludwig Wittgenstein. I've been saying this man is German, but is he German? Oh my God, he's Austrian British. Jesus Christ. His book was in German, so I felt it was in, he must have been German. I mean, Wittgenstein sounds like a pretty German last name. But actually, guys, he's Austrian British. I don't know about geographical value. Could Austria have been conquered by then or not? I don't know. 1889. Anyways, he's a European philosopher. So I'm going to go into a quote tunnel. A quote tunnel is a segment of the show where I just read a bunch of quotes from a person or a theme in history just to get a sense of like how this person's mind would sequence language, would how their mind would at least looked at the world, you know. And I attempt to read a lot of these quotes because there's a greater chance of more right ones in it. Because this is the internet. I mean, I don't know with what divine perfection the internet is set up, but like but anyways, like these are quotes ascribed to Ludwig Wittgenstein. Ludwig Wittgenstein says the limits of my language means the limits of my world. Wittgenstein says don't get involved in partial problems, but always take flight to where there is a free view over the whole single great problem, even if this view is still not a clear one. That's very true. What he's saying is like you can have an approach to problem solving rather than being like an eagle on a branch where you're in the problem, inside the problem, you're looking at the problem from outside the problem. So it's like any problem you have, whether it's with people or conditions of nature or whatever, it's like first you got to look at from the eyes of the problem and the eyes of yourself who has the problem. You got to access both views. So that bird flying in the sky is kind of like how Ludwig Wittgenstein says. but always take flight to where there is a free view over the whole single great problem, even if you is still not a clear one. Wittgenstein says philosophy is a battle against the bewitchment of our intelligence by means of language. Wittgenstein says if people never did silly things, nothing intelligent would ever get done. Wittgenstein says the human body is the best picture of the human soul. Wittgenstein says philosophy is like trying to open a safe with a combination lock. Each little adjustment of the dial seems to achieve nothing. Only when everything is in place does the door open. That's very true, guys, because language has an architecture to the conscious personality or archetype. It can appear as a challenge or as a puzzle of some sort. That means a puzzle has design. It's not an invisible question. It's a visible question, So because it's like our there's a mystery to how language and experience are infused. Um, it's as if it's a sort of, it becomes a visible mystery, a visible puzzle. The mind is a visible puzzle. The soul is an invisible puzzle. Think of it this way. Wittgenstein says a confession has to be part of your new life. Yeah, you gotta be able to be comfortable to acknowledge certain things anew. That means you can't really bring forth the new if the past is judging you. Wittgenstein says, whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. Does that masters agree? Wittgenstein says a serious and good philosophical work could be written consisting entirely of jokes. Of course, because the paradoxical kind of modality of the dualism of language can't be avoided. It means when the more you go towards, as I say, as Mr. Within says, that you go closer to the language threshold, you're kind of going to the vanishing point of the narrative that your consciousness is active in, simulated in. So that means the language that is being you right now, the words or the concepts or the images that you're identifying with, suddenly realizing that there's a way that there's something present as the attention, regardless of the condition of the material design or the subjective immaterial design. Wittgenstein says philosophy is not a theory but an activity. I see parallels to this quote as to Rumi, who says be living poetry. Wittgenstein says never stay up on the barren heights of cleverness, but come down into the green valleys of silliness. It is very crucial, guys, because in silliness, the mind is like liquid. In cleverness, the mind is solid. The solid doesn't change as easily as the liquid does. The liquid can adjust to the container. The solid can't. A person with solid beliefs cannot adjust to a civilization that in every generation is being contained in its own way. You know? Wittgenstein says the real discovery is the one which enables me to stop doing philosophy when I want to, the one that gives philosophy peace so that it is no longer tormented by questions which bring itself into question. And this is the only way René Descartes understood this the hard way, is that you kind of like, to him, you can't doubt the doubter. In other words, you can't question the one asking the question, right? So what does that mean? That means when Wittgenstein says the one that gives philosophy peace so that it is no longer tormented by questions which bring itself into question, what that means is you will be tormented by questions the moment you want to analyze an endless manifest landscape. Okay, so the torment is there the bigger the system is. So that means the more bigger the problems are, the more unknown there is. It's like the more black holes there are, the more we're like, whoa, there's like black holes in the universe, and the cosmos has like blank spots on it, you know. So these blank spots, their gravitational pull is so much that beyond the event horizon, the instantaneity of the pull is non-existence. So that would be a way of kind of like death by event horizon would be kind of death by material like literally instead of anything breaking, there's literally nothing kind of dying or being destroyed. It's ultimate vanishing. It's a dimensional shift. It's literally like you suddenly like being in a space station and then the gravitation being adjusted and you suddenly having normal gravitation. Imagine. Kind of like, or even in a plane in free fall, imagine. You know. What I'm trying to say is like the relationship of the environment's force upon you changes. And in the inner realms, the environment's force does change. And if the person has not understood that behind their eyes they are being worlds, their attention is being a world, the person will still be drawn and attracted by the game of this is why sometimes I look at esoteric communities, and to me they're like young kids playing with toys. I'm telling you, there's no secret. It's what is the secret? You know, light is in the eyes of existence. That's it. What super secret is there? What greater enlightenment can there be than light and being the phenomenology? It's so instantaneous that I was like, not even the ancient yogis, like, the ancient the ancient sadhus and like the ancient minds couldn't even comment on this shit. It's pretty much just this recognition that modern civilization now demands not just living as a body, but living as a mind, and to realize that the species is like pretty much what's the best thing that can happen on a rock with a bunch of creatures on it. These creatures either they see something better they can do or they don't. And pretty much in every moment of my life, regardless of what narrative, what story I've entertained, regardless of how high I felt I was in my hierarchical kind of judgment of my own existence, or regardless of how low I felt I was, I realized that ultimately it's a moment is here, and there is effort or there is no effort. There is action or there is inaction. So on a very subtle level, the mind is with like a tiny push emerging worlds. So this is when mastery, I personally say, um, the mastery of your inner realms resides in how much you abide by your direct experience. That means it's no longer about learning something that's written on a chalkboard. It's about breaking that chalkboard and realizing the world is too much too dynamic for the way we put it in boxes of words. The world is not a word, pretty much. That's what I'm saying. But people, we're living in a civilization that believes they are the language. This is why when you say something to someone, that person suddenly can react to what you said. That reaction is a testament that they thought they were a certain language. You came and put different language in their mind, and when that language went into their mind, they automatically had to either wonder about what this language is, or it's like anything that comes in your space, and the instant your free will feels can't move it, the person will begin kind of pulling away from. That means it's like we're creatures of that nowadays require sort of mental certainty. That means it's like when you want to cross the street, you look at everything. You know, I feel it's like every child in the world should be introduced to like at least see the Sherlock Holmes movies or read the Sherlock Holmes books. Let me tell you why. Because that dude took responsibility for the content of his mind. He was actually looking at what the subjective implication of phenomena was, you know? And I find true, this is something that I feel it was like in the eyes of many polymaths in the world, it was open. And that they are seeing in behind their eyes a sort of vision that is beyond their desire, beyond the desire. That's when in the inventive archetype appears. The archetype of the inventor appears when the person sees the value of something more than their mind can define, and that wonder pulls you. That's the I think a great epitome of creative experience on this plane of existence. Yeah. I remember hearing Terrence McKenna say something so in the way he said it, it made me laugh. He said, were kind of advanced apes making sophisticated mouth noises. And I started laughing only to realize my laughter was another mouth noise. And so I realized that means we it's like language is this rare technology, is this is this rare technology, and we have not been using it properly. And to use it properly would mean to realize that infinite creativity is generated by the gears of many dualities simultaneously occurring. That means for the first time, Mr. Within is saying people need to become responsible multidimensionally, to treat their inner realm and outer realm as if it is space that the attention can administer to. It's kind of like this. Like they say in mindfulness and Zen that you shouldn't bang a door shut. Why? Why do they say instead of banging the door shut for a moment, just stare at the door and very gently close the door? Why? Because the free will doesn't have to only be free in intense moments. And when the free will realizes the genius of its simplicity, the evocational effort of the vision behind the eyes moves the language. So if I was to say what is happening in these talks that I'm giving is a sort of inner dynamic vision is uh, through my personality in the moment, I'm extracting certain patterns from it, as if like I have my flashlight at night on a river, and that flashlight on the river, like I remember in Iran, Iran of course is a theocracy, but like I'll tell you this, we had a cottage outside of Iran, and at night I was like 15, and I remember holding a flashlight at the river. There was this kind of river beside our cottage, and that flashlight was like this kind of circle in this moving kind of river, and what were all the waves of the water in the river that were visible in the light for a second appeared to me as if that's the mind. The mind is a flashlight in a dark room. Do you see? It's a flashlight on a river, a dynamic thing. So the relationship of man with his world has to begin with discretion, and this is the cool part. The cool part, you know. That I hope I've kind of like every day I give these talks, like the vision becomes clearer to me. But it's kind of like I've brought forth this idea of School of Athens 2.0. And I had this thought that what if the all the children around the world in the educational system suddenly my voice could enter their ear for a second. You know, what would be the most valuable thing to say, you know, for the educational future of the civilization? You see, many of us, we care for education through its economical reward, not for the true sake of education. How many people care for ideas as much as they care for people? You know, sometimes I've read certain things that I've noticed the importance of that idea, and it's as if I've had to grab that idea and give it a microphone, because some designs in the world are necessary to be preserved. I call this the pillars of civilization. Certain values that they transcend the desire and the heavens of the individual. There, it's like if you're still looking for an individual paradise, you know, it's you have not understood the value of civilization. That it is the only place where 8 billion people can build 8 billion paradises in the same on the same earth. It's as if just like planting seeds in the soil in the agricultural like kind of revolution, we see it's like those seeds were planted in like a two-dimensional way, but they had a three-dimensional result. What it is we are the pioneers of the future. We can't even avoid not being it. You know, it's just that how much should we incorporate conscious living? And oh, I remember what I was trying to get to, and how this kind of idea I had of how we can do this is that, first of all, I noticed this: there is geometry in everything. If children must just not learn just normal speech, they should also learn mathematical language and geometrical language, which I don't think it, like, I hopefully one day I'll find a way where I can kind of teach or explain. I mean, teaching is explaining, really. What else is it? Anyways, children, people. I'll say this generally: human beings should go. Friends. This is in this sense. I'm saying friendships. I say should incorporate, or even in the educational system, children must be put in groups of four. And what it is okay. Let me paint a different picture. 8 billion creatures on a rock. What is a greater organizational pattern and efficient vision? People in groups of four begin wondering about how their inner realms look like. You can endlessly talk to people about how the world appears, because every person then can share. What do you really like? What can a person speak about? They can speak about where everything is, like the world or the self or another self, or ultimately that which is constitutes the inner realms. So for me, um, uh, existence is an opportunity for vision to advance beyond its wildest dreams. And if people were in groups of four, we had a kind of mini schools of Athens occur where in kind of let's say friendship units, let's call it, in these four-man friend units, four-person friend units, okay, we begin simulating a mini school of Athens. So what that means is every human being in whatever they're doing, when I say 2020 is the era of advanced communication, that means there requires from your personal realm, inner realm, an effort to step out to begin seeing civilization, to even be able to work with it. So it's as if like what is the purpose of the mind? To be the vision where the world moves in. When the world is no longer just words, do you know how much more things become relaxed? You know how much more the quality of your living increases when language is not the conditions of your existence only, where ideas are not limited. Because I'm telling you, even though we are saying like, okay, we're at more advanced than we've ever been as a civilization, but still there is a lot of primitive things happening. And the most savage thing to see is not violence for me, it's the violence of loops. It's when it's not just something bad happening, it's when something bad goes in a loop. That tends to be chaos when too much unknown. The percentage of the moment becomes too unknown suddenly. Then the known archetype has to reposition itself experientially, which means to dismantle, and the experience readjusts a new archetype. I say that your body is made of earth, and your mind is made of sky. And the mind is like going through an evolutionary process of like a caterpillar going into a cocoon and becoming a butterfly. So in its own self inquiry it becomes aware of what that self is realistically. And I feel it's as if before language, um, the instruction booklet is the world that's in front of you. The spice, the icing on the cake, but the cake, the natural being. So, anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. Honestly, silence is a canvas for sound, for speech. And once a person can honor silence, they can honor any sort of noise. I mean, volume of the noise is different, but any sort of shape of language you don't get startled by. When you realize that your eyes, it's like others, no person on this earth has your eyes. When you realize that, that means no person on this earth is looking at your problems in the way you are looking at your problems. So that means ultimately at the end of the day, every person has to be responsible in piloting their vision, their attention. And to pilot your attention means you don't have to have a belief system in it. You don't have to be a creature of fixed language, you know. It's as if a belief is like somebody putting a painting so close to your eyes that you don't see anything. It's like when we believe things, we turn life into a picture, and that's a flaw because it's where pictures are being dynamic and generated all the time. So it's like just like how we say human beings are breathing, it's like behind the eyes of the person there is an engagement with subjective imagery. That subjective imagery is the linguistic simulation where our characters and personalities live. But to understand this means that means this is a very deep level of philosophical, I think, consideration where we're saying, kind of, if the if the source is unknown, it regardless of how much the truth beyond the conditions of linguistic rules, you know. So I feel our civilization will be advanced if it can realize that of the unknown experiencer that's present. How in this moment you are an attention in the cosmos, hence cosmic attention. You are aware of a cosmos, hence cosmic awareness. You are aware of various phenomena and designs, hence, kind of the awareness of the designer. And reality is not just meant to be lived right and wrong. Morality should not dominate the will of the explorer within. Morality is just a story to be aware of, to realize that it is not only our eyes in the world, but the eyes of the other. That means it doesn't matter if you're a yogi that thinks every being is being one kind of being, as if you see God in everyone, or if you are like a person who doesn't see God in everyone, but sees still everybody has a unique potential to do what is something new. It's as if the unknown potential of people begins to fascinate you. Therefore, you begin realizing that an advanced civilization must begin from advanced values. So, wonder about how advanced your values can be. And when you reach that point where you see the what ifs, the why nots, that's when engage that vision and pilot on. You know. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. The conscious evolution beyond language into a remembrance of all that is. Our minds are realizing that they are not just the body, they are also the world where the body is in. Honestly, this again, I'll say it ushers in a new level of intelligence for the human being. It's as if we've been defining ourselves in static ways. History has just been a photo album, but it is not so. We are living as rivers. Our minds are like the lion's roar. And a lion, in some sense, if it does not have pride, it will never have a pride. You know, if it doesn't have pride, it'll never have pride. That means sometimes in life, the new things cannot emerge until your attention brings them in, projects them. And this projection doesn't mean a character in a story wants it, and that's why life is happening that way. It's because there is a recognition that sure, I can identify with this cup here. I can identify with just atoms. It's as if, in 2000, I don't know when it was, But pretty much this is what orbits kind of like Jordan Peterson's career, where this man spoke against a sort of restriction on language, a sort of, in his eyes, a sort of it's as if what is the identity of the person based on? And it's as if there was a kind of dispute on pronouns. And what I'm trying to say is that the person can just attribute themselves to any subject. So what that means is whether you like it or not, whether you think you have choice, free will or not, free will is an illusion or not, your attention chooses what it chooses. So what I mean by that is this: it's the relationship of the species with its language, how its language gives the whole thing meaning is shifting, and we need language engineers. We need advanced communicators to uh, begin the great work of history. Kind of the alchemical vision that lead was turned into gold. And that was a metaphor for ultimate transformation, a sort of purification of inefficiency into efficient vision. That means if you feel you don't deserve the advanced, well, okay, that's your mind. How can I say? That's the mind. Um, like we can say that if the mind had an ability to project the worst self, why did it not have an ability to project the best self? What was keeping the external realities activation, and is it an internal authorization that's missing? And how does an internal authorization come? I think an internal authorization won't appear until something directly experiential happens. That means it's as if you can wear the mask of the belief for a while, but if the experience doesn't happen, then it's as if you become a statue idol worshiper. The language even becomes hollow at that point. That means even the language doesn't have a spirit in it. It's sort of dynamic vision of the effort of that uh, linguistic arena or effort. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste.